Get it started. All right. Boom. We in the gym. Welcome to EJ's Gym, a guide to elevate your mindset. I have a special guest here with me today. I'll let my guest introduce himself. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm John Wilson. I'm an old ex-football player from North Carolina State University and played at 3 high schools in the state to get there. Back in the days when people didn't transfer around high schools much like they do now.
Okay. And we can't start the show since we live in person until John puts on the EJ's Gym hat. It's official, we in the gym. Alright, John, so tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you said born and raised?
I was born and raised in North Carolina, and my dad, I was interesting because my father was a high school football coach and later a college football coach, and a really good one. He's actually in the North Carolina State Hall of Fame.
Right.
So I had a very interesting upbringing. I hung around him and his football players and the teams that he coached all the way up through high school. And when I joined his team by being a player, and I think I learned a lot of football before I ever got on the field.
Wow.
I was very lucky.
Wow.
I used to sit down on Sunday nights in the basement of our house in Winston-Salem, and they would break down films from the Friday night game, and I'd watch everything. And then we'd watch the films from the opposing team for the coming week, and we'd watch all that, and I really learned football in an armchair, first of all.
Wow.
And then I began to play the game when I became a peewee football player. It wasn't very good, but we had fun.
So how old were you when you first started?
I think I was maybe 8 or 9. The Ardmore Wildcats.
Really?
Yeah, we wore. We modeled after the Clemson Tigers. We wore their colors. We called the Ardmore Wildcats in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
So what was your first position?
I played guard, my first position.
Wow.
And then I went on to junior high school. I went on to junior high school, and in the 7th grade, and darn if they didn't move me to quarterback.
Really?
I played quarterback in junior high school. Because I understood what was going on better than anybody else.
Really?
And that was because I'd been watching football for a long time by then.
So could you throw the ball?
Well, I couldn't. No, I would hand it off. I was not a passer. We had a special play where it was called a pitchback pass. And I'd pitch the ball back to our fullback who had a pretty good arm, and he would throw the ball. But I would hand the ball off and I'd run the ball some.
Wow.
I was a chubby little guy in those days.
But that's a lineman's dream, to be a quarterback, a running back, a receiver, and just to have the ball in your hands, right?
And then went on to the 9th grade and played center in the 9th grade, and then my first year in high school, we were 3 years in high school. You were sophomore, junior, and senior. I was in Reynolds High School in Winston-Salem and got to play. I pretty much ran the JV team, and I played defense. I was a linebacker on defense, and I coached the defense because we only had one coach. He coached the offense. I coached the defense. That was the linebacker. It was. I never had so much fun in my life. We didn't have a very good team, but I had a lot of fun.
That's cool.
And then then we moved to Fayetteville, North Carolina. Dad changed jobs, and I was moved to center and still played linebacker also.
Right.
And played some, enough to letter that year, and then and we were second in the state that year. But I need to regress a second. When I was a sophomore, our varsity football team was a state champion. So
Mhm.
the next year we moved schools, and we were second in the state. And in my senior year, we lost to the state champion. We only lost 2 games, went 8-2, and we lost to the state champion, the state runner-up. Those are the only 2 games we lost. But that year I played. I started off as a blocking back in the backfield.
Like a fullback type.
No, the single wing blocking
Single wing
back,
block.
where I called all the plays.
Mhm.
And
You
I was
called
like-
the plays?
I called the plays. Well, I knew. Remember, I knew more about the playbook than anybody else other than the coach. And
See, linemen are the smartest guys on the field.
So it was kind of it's funny.
Right.
So our blocking back was in an exchange student program, and he was over in France. And so they moved me from center to blocking back. And then we weren't sure if he was coming back or not. So I played blocking back and linebacker on defense. And then he came back a week and a half before our first game. They moved me back to center. The good news is I missed all of summer ball, preseason ball. I got to go with the backfield all preseason.
Really?
All my linemen guys, they were getting killed on the line.
Wow.
So anyway, I moved back.
Uh-huh.
I moved back to the line and played center, but I still called all the plays.
Wow.
So I called all the plays on offense and all the plays on defense, and I went both ways.
So how could you do that as a center? Wouldn't the defense pick up on the play calling?
Okay, so the way we do it is really very simple. I called plays in the huddle, and if I wanted to change the play, we weren't set yet, so I would just stand up and I'd change the play.
Wow.
And I could see as much as anybody else could see, because I would bend over the ball, so to speak, late. It's a lot like the offensive linemen centers today call offensive line blockers.
Yeah, the
right?
scheme. Yeah.
But I was calling all the plays, and we had the single wing was a very analytical offense. So we had all the plays were numbered. And I mean, we had a lot of plays, and we had different series, so...
Was it like more of a gap scheme, the single
Well,
wing?
it was in those days, because most of the teams you played ran some form of 6-man front. They'd either run a 6-2, a wide tackle 6, which is the hardest defense to run the single wing against, or they'd run a 6-1, which is a fairly even defense with the middle linebacker. Sometimes you'd run against a 5-man front, which we love to play against, because the 5-man front can't stop a single wing. You just can't do it, at least in those days. And it was just so we just called the series that we needed to run, and we'd go to it, and everybody would do their jobs, and we had a ball. We had a really, really good time. Scored my first touchdown. Playing defense, intercepted a pass,
wow.
pick 6.
Lineman's dream once again.
Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. All right, so Goldsboro. So you guys ended up winning state 2 years in a row, or
We won the state
1 year?
runner-up, and then we were actually 3rd in the state my senior year.
Right.
So when they ranked everybody at the end, we were 3rd in the state.
And I had the opportunity to interview his dad, Shirley Wilson, and I'll leave a little blurb where you guys can go ahead and check that out. But the next question is, how was it just having a dad as a coach? Because you mentioned that you were prepared.
So it was actually easy. So when I played in the backfield, we had a backfield coach. When I played on the line, we had a line coach. And when I played linebacker, we had a defensive coach. My dad coached receivers on offense, so I didn't have to play for him directly. And he ran the overall defense. But he pretty much turned that over to his defensive coordinator. He would only insert himself when he needed to. So I didn't really play for him directly. He was just a head man that made it all work. He was a great motivator.
I know.
And it's sad, because he was such a good motivator. That's what I expected when I went to college. I had played in 2 All-Star games. I played in the Shrine Bowl, and I started in that game. I called all the plays the second half of the game. It's kind of interesting. We ran the single wing in the Shrine Bowl, and we had some great quarterbacks. John Swafford, people know John Swafford was. He was on that team. Brad Evans, who played at Duke, was on that team. Tommy Love was a tailback on that team who went to Michigan State and started, and unfortunately died of a heart attack. He was only a sophomore up at Michigan State. So we had a lot of great talent. And we got in the first half of that game. South Carolina had a good football team. And we couldn't move the ball at all. And one of the reasons we couldn't move the ball is the offense was disjointed. The single wing's an interesting offense. It has a lot of misdirection. So you have to know how to set up the misdirection. One series or one set of plays feeds off the misdirection of another set. And these quarterbacks running a T formation, they didn't know how to do that. So at halftime, after a fiery talk by my dad and the assistant coaches, they looked at me and said, "John, we're going to have to let you run the offense." So I got to run the offense in the second half, and we scored 35 points.
Wow.
And nobody's ever scored 35 points in a half since then on either side in the Shrine game. Now, there's been some big scoring games, but 35 points and a half hadn't been done. We were losing at halftime 7-0, and we ended up winning 35-14. And South Carolina got a late score, just a throwaway score. We had a good football team. It was a lot of fun. The second half was a lot of fun.
Of course, you got to score 35 points.
Yeah.
So the question is, and not to jump around, you were, of course, you had experience with your dad, but why didn't you? I guess, matter of fact, let me rewind, and I'll get there. So your transition from the Shrine Bowl, what was your recruiting situation like?
So I was recruited by a number of schools. Alabama recruited me. I didn't want to go to Alabama. It was just too far away. Kentucky recruited me because the year before, our fullback at Fayetteville Senior High, which is now Terry Sanford Senior High, got recruited away by Kentucky. He could have gone to any school in the nation, but he chose Kentucky because I think he kind of grew up there as a young kid. So they recruited me. I was recruited, and these are schools that offered me scholarships. I was recruited by NC State, of course. North Carolina said they were going to offer me a scholarship, and then they fired their coach. So they brought in Bill Dooley, and I didn't want to wait around for some scholarship offer late in the game. So I went ahead and took the state offer. But in the meantime, I had the military academy wanted me to go there. I didn't want to go there because I didn't want to go to Vietnam. This was during the Vietnam years. I had offers from a number of other schools, but state wanted me more than anybody else, so that's where I went.
Go Pack! All right, go Pack. So now that we're on to go Pack, the NC State transition.
But before I went to state, I played in another All-Star game. That was in the summer, the East-West All-Star game in Greensboro, and that's when I transitioned. I went in there, and they didn't know where they were going to play me on offense or defense. I ended up playing on offense because they felt like they needed the offensive side of the ball was where they needed more people. And so I played left guard up there in Raleigh. We won that game. We won both my All-Star games I played in, we won. And then I went to state. And that was a real experience.
So did state recruit you as a linebacker, center?
They recruited me as an offensive lineman.
Offensive lineman.
And the reason is I had such a good game in the Shrine Bowl on offense. That's where they pigeonholed me. They saw that game. They were there, live. And that's where they put me. I never had a chance to play any defense. I was a better defensive ball player than I was an offensive ball.
So what was your experience as a lineman at NC State?
Well, it was different because I went to state as a center, and we had a bunch of guys up there. It was very odd. You couldn't play freshmen couldn't play on the varsity, so we had a freshman team. And at state, the freshmen did not practice with the varsity except later in the year. So we played 5 football games as a freshman, and so we were just like an independent team. We played among ourselves. and they tried to kill us. I mean, I have never worked so hard in my life. I've never been in such good shape. We
Yeah.
ran and ran and ran. I've never run as much as I've ever run. We had the coach that put us through all the drills had played varsity ball at state, and he had gotten sick. He had got some kind of Hodgkin's disease, I think, and he got cured of it. He was very lucky, and but he was out to kill everybody, I thought, and everybody thought he was out to kill us, and we were going to prove that he couldn't kill us, and we all worked hard and got in great shape, and started the season. We won all 5 games, so we went undefeated. We were one of 2 freshman teams at NC State ever to go undefeated. We played Chapel Hill twice, beat them both times. It was a home and home thing with them. So it's kind of funny. You only really played 4 teams. You played one team twice. We played Duke. We played Davidson. At the time, they had pretty good football. We played Davidson. We played Chapel Hill twice, and then we played one other school. I think it was maybe Wake Forest. And we won all those games. It was a lot of fun. We had a good football team. And then we played in the bowl.
The freshman team bowl
yes,
game?
in the bowl.
Really?
The bowl game was played on our old practice field at NC State.
Really?
And we played the red shirts from the varsity.
Wow.
And it was a bloodbath. So they were out to kill us.
Right.
And we were out to show, how good we were.
Handle your own.
And we won the game. We beat them. But it was a tradition to do that. Something I never knew about. And we weren't playing against a bunch of 3rd and 4th teamers. We were playing against non-starters.
Right.
So there were a lot of 2nd team guys we were playing. So it was a very interesting, fun game. We had them all. And then we practiced some more with them a few times, and then that was it for the season for us. And then we were supposed to go hit the books and start working out and get ready for the next spring. And then they had a few more games to play, and they had a good team that year. That was 1967. They were it's ranked as high as 3rd in the nation up through the 8th game of the year, and then they went up to Penn State and lost on a goal line stand where they couldn't get in the end zone. And the same thing happened to them the following week at Clemson, so they fell out of the top 10. But they did go on to the bowl game, the Liberty Bowl, and they beat Georgia in that game. And so I think they ended up ranked after the end of the season about 12th or 13th, something like that. They had a good football team.
Gotcha. So the next question would be for me, like to you, is like, how has the game of offensive line changed to you, your perspective, being a lineman and watching? We were at the game this Saturday watching State and Syracuse. What's the difference in the game?
Dramatically different. In the old days when I played, the linemen were smaller, and the rules were different. You could not use your hands.
Oh, so you
had to keep. They had a penalty called illegal use of hands. If you got your hands extended beyond this position
so
right
you
here,
couldn't
if you did this,
extend.
you're gonna get flagged for 15 yards. It was a 15-yard penalty.
So you can only get in front of a guy.
You can only get in front of a guy.
You can never lock on a pass. This is what we get taught.
So you cannot block high in that scheme. If you went up high like this, the defensive guy can use his hands and he'll just flip you.
Wow.
So you had to block low. So we were taught to block low. A lot of scramble blocking, right around the legs. We had all.
Did you guys like crab, like the ground?
We did crab blocking, which we call scramble.
Oh, that's what you call scramble. Okay, different
crab
terminology. Okay.
We learned we crabbed, but that was to build strength. And then the scramble block was really you fire out low and you catch yourself before you hit the ground with your hands.
So it's not a true cut block.
And then you scramble up.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's like boom
and
like
up.
that.
Yeah.
We were taught, see the knee. So in other words, you eye to the knee, see the knee.
Right.
So block low, and the plays were designed, to take advantage of that type of blocking and tie the defensive man up as best you could. There were a lot of double teams in that scheme at the point of attack. And so most football was power football until the veer offense came along. And in the veer offense, they took wider splits. We played Houston. They invented the veer, and we beat them in 1967, and we played them again 2 years later, and they beat us pretty bad. Houston, they would take a wider split. You know, we were 1.5 to 2 feet. Houston was a good 3 foot split.
Wow.
And
that's natural running lanes, though.
What they did is they optioned the defensive line. So you could double team at point of attack and tie up both the down man and the linebacker coming off the double team, and then the quarterback would option the defensive man. So you have a dive back diving in there, and he's going to take that back. If he doesn't take the back, well, the quarterback's got another option. He can keep the ball, or he can pitch it. So
that's the triple option, right?
That was the triple option. That's exactly what they ran. It was a very interesting scheme. But up until then, and Stephen, and still during that time, most football was power football. It was designed. It was kind of a off-field single wing, but you had quarterback under center. So you use a lot of the same single wing techniques. You'd have a wing back, you'd have maybe 2 running backs, and a quarterback. And whereas the single wing had the quarterback was really the tailback. So you had a tailback, fullback, and they moved the blocking back over under center to play quarterback, and he was a different type player. So you had really 3 skilled people in the backfield in this new wing T setup. Versus only 2 skilled people. Blocking backs weren't skilled; they were blockers.
They were just blockers,
So the football was really different on the line. I mean, it was just completely different. And later, it wasn't until the late 70s that they liberalized the blocking and adopted the professional football's blocking rules
with the hands.
And even after that, they even liberalized it further. I think the first iteration with the hands was you could push away, and now later on you could actually lock up with your hands. But that would be either one of those would have been holding in the days that I played the game. So you had to be much better in shape as a lineman because it was more difficult to block low. You can't do that stuff. I mean, you had to be quicker. Now you can be much bigger. You just couldn't be that big anymore. And the really big guys, well, you might get some big tackles on offense. Most of the big guys were really on defense, and you just try to tie them up. I remember the year before I went to State played Michigan State up there. I'm gonna take this on.
No, you're fine.
They played Michigan State up at Michigan State, and Bubba Smith was on the other line, and they had the biggest defensive line in college football up until in those days. And I remember the guys telling me it was just a brutal game. They didn't get beat badly; they got beat. And these were just big people they were playing against, super big people. I think Cal Stahl was a defensive line coach in those days up there. He later was the head coach at Wake Forest. That was really different. Then I played. After I finished at State, I coached football for a year at Elon.
Yeah, that was my next. Before we get there, my next transition, because you said when you were in high school and Pee Wee ball, you were coaching. So my question to you is, why not transition? Why didn't you transition into coaching? Now you're answering my question.
Well, I did transition coaching for a year. I thought about being a coach. I was single at the time. I'd seen what my dad went through, how difficult it really is. It's difficult to be a coach. It takes so much time.
Yes.
I mean, recruiting, it is time consuming. But you know, the coaching part was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. We won the conference that year that I coached, and I started 3 freshmen on the offensive line at Elon.
At Elon, wow.
Like, really,
you were coaching with your dad.
I was the offensive line coordinator. I was the offensive line coach. I begged him to let me. I had one more year. I had another year of eligibility because I had redshirted 1 year at state. I could have played at Elon and coach. I said, Dad, let me be a player. He wouldn't let me do that. He said, no, you just be a coach.
Gotcha.
But we had a pretty good football team. The offensive line was. We had some older guys, and we had these young guys, and it all worked together. We ran the beer offense, so we did a lot of creative things on the offense that you didn't see done much. Certainly in the league he was in. We did a lot.
They were NAIA.
They were NAIA at the time. They were in what's called the South Atlantic Conference.
Okay.
And had a lot of teams, a lot of good teams. And we played Appalachian, for example. We didn't win that game. We beat Western Carolina, and then pretty much all the other teams we played would beat. But we did things that they had. Most of these teams hadn't seen. We had a quick pitch play because you're lining up with 2 backs, split backs, and both of them, neither one of them knew who was going to get the ball. Both the offensive lines pulled in opposite directions, and the quarterback made the decision only when he came up and saw where the safeties were playing. The safety was playing, or linebackers.
So it was a numbers thing.
And so it was a numbers thing for him, and they get up to the line. Both backs would sprint out to either side. The lines would pull out, and then at the last minute, he would decide which way to pitch it. And it worked great because we were only really playing half the team, half the defense at that point. And we did a lot of stuff like that. I had a real smart kid that he wasn't very big, but he played tackle for me. He was a good blocker, and he was a great scramble blocker. So he was smart, and I used to tell him, I said, you should split. He said, well, how far should we split? We ran 3-foot splits on this offense. And I said, but the 3-foot split shouldn't be required. It's only, you split out as far as the other guy will go with you.
Really?
Yes.
So he will push it.
One of these games, I looked out there, and he was 6 feet away from the guard, and the defensive tackle went right with him. It's like, you don't have to block him. He's already blocked.
He took himself out the play.
He's blocked when he goes with it.
With the formation, right?
Yeah. So it's cool. Like, I was laughing to myself. I said, I can't believe that they would do that.
Defensive guys are not that smart. I'm just saying.
They may not be.
I'm joking. But wow, that's pretty cool.
It was pretty wild. We had a lot of fun that year doing that. But back to state, I mean, you know, I played in 20 games. I played in all the games my junior and senior year.
Oh, that center?
I had moved to guard.
Guard, okay.
I moved to guard, and I played in 20 games. I was mostly special teams. But, you know, we had a lot of fun, played a lot of places. Played in Miami when they were independent in those days. We played Florida State, and they were independent in those days. We were playing a tough schedule, and most of the other teams in the ACC, they weren't playing teams like that. We played Tulane when Tulane had maybe the best team they'd had in 30 years down there in the Sugar Bowl. So we got to play in these really famous stadiums. It was a lot of fun. But about my last 2 years at state, we jumped ahead and we fell back. So my last 2 years at state, we had overscheduled. So having that great football team in '67, and with the schedules not quite as far out as they are today, we picked up Houston, we picked up SMU.
Oh, they were really good.
They had the great Jerry Levias in those days.
Mm-hmm.
He was all-pro for several years as a wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
We played Penn State. The year they were defeated. So we picked up a lot of really tough games,
Gotcha.
and it was just like very brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal schedule. So we'd win most of our games in the ACC, and then we just get kind of destroyed. And then we had like 2 seasons. My junior year, we had like 2 seasons. So we had, because they wanted us to be on national TV. We played on national TV three games in a row.
Really?
And to do that, they had to move some games around.
Wow.
So we had, after our 7th game that year, a 2-week break.
Mm-hmm.
2 weekends. So we had 3 weeks really till the next game.
Right.
And then we played 3 games in a row, all on national television, back to back. Houston was one of them. Florida State,
Mm-hmm.
at Florida State,
Mm-hmm.
and then we played Penn State at home.
Gotcha.
And it was brutal. And they all 3 had really good football teams.
Mm-hmm.
We should have beaten Florida State, even though we played it. We were ahead at halftime, but we just didn't play a good second.
Were they making all that?
Oh, they did. But
They didn't do that back then?
they did do that back then. But the stadium wasn't like
It
wasn't as big a stadium in those days.
It wasn't like 100,000 people sitting in those.
No, it was. I think their stadium seated about 60,000.
60,000.
Still a good size.
That's a good size.
It's a big stadium for those days.
Mhm.
So we, it was an interesting game. Then the next season came. We started doing the first time we ever did winter workouts
Mm-hmm.
was after my junior year,
Really?
and we did winter workouts. And Chuck Amata was with us by then. He had come back to get us.
So you played with Chuck?
I played with him. He was a senior when I was a freshman.
Really?
And then he came back and got got a master's degree and was a graduate assistant.
Mm.
And so my senior year and going into the senior year and that spring practice and all the winter workouts,
Mm-hmm.
he was part of all that.
Okay. Well, I had an opportunity to meet Chuck. Chuck was a cool guy. I met him working the Russell Wilson camp.
Yeah.
And some of the old guys, like I tell you, Brian was out there,
Yeah,
and then
that's
we were
right.
out just hanging out. Marcus Altman, I don't think he was a state guy, but he was a former NFL.
Right.
And we were just hanging out at the cooler,
Yeah.
and Chuck came up and started making conversation.
So Chuck came up.
Yeah,
Said,
yeah,
"Hey, this is Chuck."
That's Chuck. He sounds just like that, but he was a super cool guy.
Yeah.
I took a picture with him, and we
He
just
was
had
always a
conversation.
gentleman. He knew Dad fairly well, and he would always ask how my father was doing. Every time I say, "How's Red doing?" I said, "He's doing great, Chuck." And Chuck, he's had his own health problems, but I think he's doing okay.
Okay, good. All right, so another thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to turn the camera a little bit, is transition from after. First off, what did you study, and what was your transition after football?
So I studied economics. I went to school as a pre-med major,
Mm-hmm.
and the chemistry and the physics and all that stuff. I just didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to study that, and so I changed majors and became a economics major, kind of by default.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I
Gotcha.
coached football for a year, and then
Right, at
after
Elon.
I did, at Elon, and then after that, I just was looking for a job, and I went to work in the life insurance industry,
Mm-hmm.
and as luck would have it, because I wanted to do strategic planning, and I wanted to do it because I felt there was a parallel between planning, as like a coach would plan for a game, how he would strategize a game, and I'd grown up around that, so I thought there was a parallel between that and strategizing in business, and that's what I wanted to do. So I was lucky enough to work for the head of the department as kind of a junior guy in a life insurance company in Greensboro, and that was in the budgeting and planning area for them. And it was mostly marketing, but it was budgeting and planning. And so I got into it doing that. And I kept going to school and I got a master's degree in economics. I went to school at night while I was working full time.
Where did you get your master's?
I got it at UNC Greensboro.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go on. I really wanted to get a PhD, but by then I had a young daughter, and it was just, it was too difficult. I didn't know how I could do it financially. So my wife never worked, so we had a young child. So I just kept worked for about 4 years at Pilot Life, and then got recruited away to go to another insurance company up in Baltimore. And we left this area and moved up to Baltimore, doing the same thing. And while I was in Baltimore, you have your ups and downs, and I obviously wasn't doing what they wanted, and I'm not sure they knew what they wanted to do. So they fired me, and after 1 year, after I went in for my annual review, and he fired me.
Wow.
And I said, that's interesting. So I had to find a job like really quick, and I found one in Baltimore at a company called Fairlanes. They were in the bowling and tennis business. They had about 115 bowling centers and about 30 indoor tennis facilities, and they had about 30 fast food restaurants. And so I went to work for them for about 2 years, all in the budgeting and planning area. And this was kind of down and dirty budgeting. And I learned a lot of stuff there. And saw an ad in the news, Wall Street Journal one day, towards the end of my second year there, looking for a head of planning at Hardee's Food Systems in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And so I sent a resume in, and I found out later, along with about 300 other people, and I was one of 3 people they brought in to interview.
Wow.
And then I got offered the job, and we moved to Hardee's, and it really changed.
You moved to Rocky Mount?
From Rocky Mount, North Carolina, from Baltimore, Maryland. It was a great career change because I developed great relationships there. I was given the ability to really develop a lot of planning and ideas and strategic thought, and the business was growing like crazy. So it was just a really super opportunity. So I stayed there for about 8 years, and moved up the ladder until I became a board member of their board of directors and chief financial officer of the company, and the president of their real estate group. So it was really cool. And but they didn't pay me that much. So a guy from Perrier, the water people, was they were looking for somebody to help them put together an acquisition program to buy and integrate some of the businesses they were buying in the U.S. And I went to work with those guys. The guy that hired me had gone to NC State. He was about 10 years older than me. He had been an old boy from North Carolina and moved up up to the New Jersey area and been up there for the rest of his life, just about. And he hired me, and I went to work with Perrier. Sometimes you make good decisions and sometimes you don't.
So what about that situation?
He was a great guy to work with.
Yeah.
The French were not great people to work for.
Gotcha.
And they wanted me to cook the book, so I said, I can't do it. And they said, well, then we don't want you. And they fired me. This is 1 year there. So this is, and at this time I'm 40 years old.
Really?
I had been fired twice in my life already. And it's like I'm thinking, man, I must be a failure or something. So I just kept working hard until the fellow that hired me at Hardee's was now in Canada. And he was working with Bell Canada, the largest company in Canada. And they were looking for someone to head up their corporate finance department at Bell Canada for their international group and do a bunch of international acquisitions. So they brought me to Canada and hired me. And I went there and did a whole bunch of stuff all over the world. And it was interesting. We took a company public, we financed a lot of overseas companies. And that led me right to Wall Street. And then I went to Wall Street from there.
So what was your title on Wall Street, or your day-to-day operation?
So my title, excuse me, my nose is running. So my title on Wall Street, when I first went there, I was a director, which was about 3 levels, from the top. And then I went to Solomon Brothers. I did not like it. I didn't like Solomon Brothers. I liked Wall Street, but I didn't like Solomon Brothers. So one of the managing directors, which is a 1 level higher, one of the managing directors was lamenting that, and it was a woman that I worked with, and is a woman that brought me in. She said, we can't stay around this company. It's like she was paranoid. So I knew some guys at another company. I knew them pretty well, and I talked to them. And one of them happened to be the chief operating officer of the actual investment banking group. And they were looking for some telecommunications bankers, and they needed to build up their business. And so I went to see him, and he told me, he said, if you can bring Wendy with you, say you're both hired, and we'll give you a guaranteed salary the first year. I said, I'll get her. So I brought her with us, and we both went to work for Solomon Brothers. I mean, from Solomon Brothers to Credit Suisse. And that's where that my career really began in earnest at Credit Suisse. And we did a lot of stuff there. I did a lot of big transactions.
Gotcha.
And we put together a company over in the UK that I had actually taken public when I was at Bell Canada. We merged them with several companies. It was a big $4 billion transaction. 2 years later, we took them apart, and it was a 25. It was 25 billion when we took them apart. And then my friend who had hired me up in Canada, we helped him get the chief financial officer job at AT&T.
Really?
Yes. And when he got to AT&T, he was there for 3 weeks, and he called me and said, I have a deal for you. And they brought us in, and they wanted us to keep them from getting getting acquired by another company. And so we pretty much advised them on that. And because it would have been a hostile takeover.
Gotcha.
And after that, it led to a $12 billion transaction that they bought a company. We advised them on that. And then, right after that, he called me in again and said, we're going to go after TCI. TCI is a huge company. And it was a $70 billion transaction. So we did that, and then it was like a month after we closed it. I'll never forget, on my 50th birthday, we acquired another company, which is Media One, another huge cable company, a $64 billion transaction. So in less than 3 years, I had already done $146 billion worth of M&A transactions. Most people don't do that in a 20-year career.
Wow.
We did it in 3 years.
Wow.
And to me, it was just like playing football. It was all the same to me. It was all a game. You have to figure out how to play the game.
I like that. And then before we got on camera, we had a short discussion about transitions and life after football. Whether you play in high school or college, the game will end. Even if you make it pro, it's an end point to the game. And some people struggle with transitioning. And you mentioned, so let me into your mindset of how do you see life as a game in relation to football?
It's like, remember, I had a couple of big failures in my life, and the way I looked at it is no different than when you're playing football. In football, you might lose a game, but you don't quit just because you lose a game.
I like that.
You got to go back to work the next day.
Yes.
And you might not be going back to work at the company you were at, but you go to work finding a way to get a new job. But it is all the same as if you're playing football. It's just a game. Business is just a game. It's a big game, but it's all a game. And moving up the ladder is no different. It's competing with your fellow players. You know, you have to compete with your friends. It doesn't mean you kill them, but you have to compete with them. And you do the same thing in business. And you have to learn your plays. You have to learn your business. You know, you have to learn what makes your business better. You have to learn what makes you better as a football player. So it's not a lot of difference. I mean, you're in different things. You're not in business and playing football are not the same.
Right.
But conceptually,
right,
they're the same underpinnings are there. And you can take your life experience, you know, when you're younger and playing the game, and you can apply those experiences of tenacity, of playing smart. You apply those things to business. Never quitting. I mean, you can apply all those things to business.
Wow.
Being honest.
I like
Being
that.
honest is important in business.
Really? I love it.
Telling people the truth.
I love it.
Telling people the truth.
I love it.
Is way better than telling them a falsehood or bending the truth a little bit.
Wow.
Or trying to lay the blame on somebody else. You don't get ahead doing that. There are too many smart people in the business world. You get ahead by being a straight shooter and being honest with people and delivering on your promises.
And I like that. And I'm not gonna lie, Whitney's helped me out a lot, you know. But I learned just to be myself. Is what I'm creating. And I noticed that certain families, they gravitate to me. And just like you, I'm just myself. I tell them the truth. This is what I know. This is my skill. This is my talent. And I notice people kind of, you know, stick to that. Me being honest and being truthful to who I am.
That's right. And that's 9/10 of the game. Luck is also part of it, but you can prepare yourself to be lucky. Right?
Like that.
Prepare yourself to be lucky.
So that's enough.
If you have to be in a business meeting, overstudy. You know, learn more than you know.
Wow.
Read up on the things you might come across. You may never have to use it, but be prepared to use it. Be prepared. That's right.
Yes.
Be prepared to use your knowledge.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And what I usually do when I interview people, I have a few questions that I ask, and you can respond any way. It's a fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And the first question is, confidence is what to John?
Knowing yourself.
I love it. I love it. Knowing yourself. Okay, attitude is what to John?
Oh, if you have a good attitude, you can get good results. If you have a great attitude, you get great results. If you have a poor attitude, you can get poor results.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And this is the last one that I usually ask. Mindset is what to John?
Oh, well, to me, mindset is all of all those questions you just asked. It's all of it rolled together.
You got it. You got it. You got it. You're the first guest. You got it. All right, there we go. I love it. I love it. But go ahead.
I just wish I was a lot younger than 72.
But you got it. Your mindset is your confidence and your attitude rolled into one. But what else do you have to add into that?
Oh, no, you've covered a lot. I mean, people that are young now really have a dawning future. I mean, we've got a world that's got lots of problems. But if they're truthful with people, they work hard, they never quit learning, you never quit learning.
I love that. Yes.
You can do really well. And you shouldn't have to worry about the future.
Okay.
In fact, you should never worry about the future. It's always going to be there. But you just have to be prepared for what you come up against.
I love it. And we can't get off the camera without you telling me right now. No, we were at the Syracuse game right now, and I'll give you 5 guys, or maybe 3, or maybe 1. Your favorite current NC State players right now.
Oh, my favorite. I can't just pick one.
So 5. Okay, 5 would be the limit. Let's get 5.
Right. So I like Durden.
Durden.
I think, first of all, here's a kid that comes in. I mean, he decided to transfer from Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he could have been a great player at Florida State. He decided to transfer to Florida State because I think he felt like he needed to be in an environment where it was really all about football and nothing else, and where he would be given a shot, to really show what he could do on the defensive line. He comes in, and they put him as an edge rusher. He was really good, and then the middle guard gets hurt. And they had another middle guard, a couple other middle guards.
A nose tackle?
Nose
tackle. He's 48. He's 48, right? Is it 48?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I use the old term.
Okay, yeah.
It's a nose tackle. They used to be called middle guard, now they're nose tackles. There are no guards on defense anymore. So the nose tackle. And so he moves over, and he would have had a lot more opportunities at sacks out there as an edge rusher. But for the team, he moves into the middle, and he has controlled the line of scrimmage.
Really?
One man controls 3 people.
Yeah, that's tough.
That's
tough.
People don't understand what a nose tackle really does. It's not a nose tackle plays over the center or slides in and plays over the guard. He plays over 3 people. His role is to consume the center of the offense. And then let
Drake and all those guys can
all the other guys have free reign. And in the line, if a nose tackle's doing his job, the linebacker nearest him should make a lot of tackles. And I think Drake's right at 100 or so right now.
Yeah, and that's because of the
that means he's done his job and more. Because he's also got some sacks. And he's thrown a lot of backs for losses. So he's really done what he was supposed to do. So I admire him tremendously. I admire the man right behind him too.
Who's that?
That's old Drake.
That's one of my favorites. I'm not gonna lie. Drake Thomas at Heritage. We played against those guys at Holly Springs. Man, he was a great player.
He's not the biggest middle linebacker. He's certainly not as big as Isaiah was, but who's coming back, by the way. But Drake is another guy who filled in a position. He moved from the outside to the inside. And
I like him there though.
He is so good. Such a good linebacker.
He's so good.
So smart. And he makes big plays, and he's just always there. I love the guy.
Everywhere.
I like Devin Leary.
Quarterback.
And I like him because here's a kid that broke his leg last year. And he was always like the heir apparent, but he broke his leg.
Was he a freshman last year too? No?
Well, he was technically. I think he redshirted and next year. He was a redshirt freshman last year in the year that didn't count. So he's still a redshirt freshman. But he broke his leg and he worked hard. And he's come back, and he is now one of the finalists, not semi-finalists. He's one of the finalists for the Golden Arm Award, which is the best quarterback in the nation. And it's only because he just has learned the position well, and he's stuck to the knitting, and he's learned how to be a leader. I don't think he came in as a true leader, but I think he learned to be a leader. And what a neat kid, and he is efficient is a good word. He's excellent. He's excellent in those regards. My next man I like is a defensive back, and that would be what's his name, number 10. Is that Engel? Tanner Engel, the human missile. He is unbelievable. I love the guy's energy and his ability to, especially diagnose a run play. What a great football player. And I admire him even more because he had a problem last year hitting too high with the
Yeah,
helmet.
he had a few. He got kicked out of the game.
I mean, he ended up sitting the rest of the year because he had too many, and but he worked on his technique. He worked hard, and he's proven that you can be really aggressive and avoid the penalties as well.
Yeah.
He's fantastic. And the last guy is the punter.
Really?
Look, this guy has been so good. He has put the other team in the hole so many times this year. I hope he's an All-American punter because he is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what not Dunn's the kicker, but what's the punter?
I don't remember.
I can't remember
I
either.
don't know.
But I think he's fantastic. So there's a special teams guy,
Yeah.
2 defensive guys,
Yeah.
2 offensive guys.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. One of my favorites.
There are 3 defensive guys, 1 offensive
that you didn't mention is Thayer. Thayer, the other brother, is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
Thayer is one of my
if
favorites.
you had said
on
6,
offense.
he would have been.
Yeah.
Because he's a big playmaker.
He's a big playmaker.
He's a sneaky player. You don't really. He lulls you to sleep, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, he's got some big plays for you.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't even realize.
I think out of all the receivers that I've watched in the last couple of years, he's been the most consistent one.
He is very consistent.
Yeah.
Miki, they double team him all the time.
Messi.
He's really tough. Yeah,
Mhm.
they double team him so much that he can't be as productive as he should be.
Mhm.
If we had more receivers that they were paying attention to, he'd be open a lot more often.
For sure.
But he makes some big catches too.
Sure.
He makes the sideline and those corner catches better than anybody I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, last question, and we can end this interview. What type of advice would you give? No, this is not wrong one. I'm sorry. What type of advice would you give to Dave Doran if you can give him advice before this UNC game and you had him on the line? What would you say to him, if you could?
Attack him. Attack him. On offense and on defense.
Aggressive.
And just be as aggressive as possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'd say. That's the way I'd play it.
Mm-hmm.
No holds barred.
No holds
Just go
barred.
after 'em.
It's a rivalry game now.
It's a rivalry game. You got to attack the other team. This is the game you have to do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate John coming through. Well, I actually came through and we brought the gym to him. But like I love to say, we all go through that roller coaster of life. So why not have a guide to elevate your mindset? Jim, out.
That's great.